is Bob Barker, and you're listening to Animal House Radio with Aaron and Dr. Mike.
She has a tattoo on the inside of her ear, and they traced the tattoo and the chip in her neck to Paris, France, to a non-working telephone number in Paris, France, and no forwarding name or address or anything. So when the man that found her here in the United States found her, she was pregnant, took her to the vet. It was too late to abort the kittens, so she gave birth to the kittens. The animal clinic where he took her, the veterinary clinic, found homes for her kittens. I actually have a picture of Natasha with her babies. Took her, the man took her home, and he had 4 cats. And unfortunately, soon after he brought her home, after her kittens were born and found homes for the kittens, the veterinary clinic did, the man dropped dead of a heart attack.
Wow.
So the wife took the cats to the clinic and said, I don't want these cats. And thus is the way I ended up with Natasha, who still has the tattoo in her ear and the chip in her neck, but now she lives with me. The thought is that perhaps she was a companion cat to a very well-known, maybe show cat. This is not a story I can verify, but maybe she was a companion to a well-known show cat, and that somehow, while they were on tour, she escaped.
Well, that sounds feasible. I mean, it's definitely with that breed especially. I mean, it's rare to begin with, so that's something that's feasible that could be the case.
Well, you can see pictures of all my babies on my website. If you go to my website at chipcoffey.com, my babies are on the photos page. So all my kids are there, and there are pictures of my kids on my MySpace site.
Oh, perfect. And you know what? We also heard from Greta. She told us about the incident in Los Angeles with the pit bull.
Oh my gosh!
And I saw some pictures today, and Lisa and I were actually looking over, and I asked Lisa, I said, has the dog been spayed? Because we knew it was a female, and then Lisa said, well, maybe she was trying to figure out if it had, and if it did at a certain point, or it was an older dog, and so we were actually took quite an interest to this dog. So you were driving on the freeway.
Driving on a freeway, and there was a dog in the middle of the road with a huge lug chain around his neck, the kind that you hoist motors out of cars, not attached to a collar, just around her neck. And someone had thrown her out of a vehicle. She had been a breeder dog. She was a pit, and she had been a breeder dog, and they were done with her and didn't give a care what happened to her. And I pulled her out of the road. I slammed. A man pulled her out of the road before we got there, and then some homeless people living on the side of the road ran her back out in traffic.
Oh, goodness.
And I slammed my car over to the side of the road. I had 3 people in the SUV with me, opened up my door and jumped out in traffic, and I said, that dog is not going to die today. Yeah. And something came over me, honestly, Aaron. Something came over me, and I walked out into heavy traffic with my hands extended, yelling, stop. And it was like time stood still. Traffic on a busy L.A. freeway came to a halt. I walked over and stepped on the end of the dog's chain, and she froze too. Frantic as she might have been before, she just stopped. We put her in the car, not knowing if she was going to be dangerous or whatever, and originally found a home for her. That didn't work out. She ended up in an animal shelter. She fell through the cracks and was supposed to be euthanized. We found her another home. But the story, unfortunately, does not have a happy ending because... let me back up for a second. The dog, we raised money. Dave Schrader from Darkness Events, Darkness Radio, raised money to get the dog medical care and shipped to a home in Kansas or Missouri, I believe. And unfortunately, in the past few months, Dolly was the dog's name. She passed away.
Oh, that's too bad. But I mean, that's an absolute amazing story.
But she had a few extras. She lived on a large property for the last days of her life in a very loving home. So she cheated death twice, but, it's almost like, her life was meant to be cut short, because indeed it was. And the scary thing about it was she was still exhibiting evidence of the fact that not long before we found her on the freeway, she had given birth to puppies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's where we can see that. Yeah. Chip, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, if you don't mind, I'd love to keep you on the program just to chit-chat with you more about some of the stuff that George Norrie had to say earlier on, and to hear one of my stories that has happened to me over the years, and I'd love to get your perspective on it.
I would love that.
Great, and we got a fan base back there in the production room. Adriana wants to chit-chat with you during the break. You're listening to Animal House Radio on 1610 AM and www.animalhouseradio.com worldwide. Chip Coffey's coming back with us after the break. Back on Animal House Radio, 416-785-0680. Joined once again with Lisa and the star, in my opinion, of A&E's Paranormal State and other things that he does. Chip Coffey on the line with us. Chip, what's up, buddy?
You know, it's just a quiet Friday evening in Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S. of A.
Atlanta, Georgia, and I hope you're a hockey fan and you go see the Atlanta Thrashers.
I don't, but one of my friends is huge.
Well, you should go see some hockey. And when you come up to Toronto, we're going to go see some, well, it's almost impossible to get hockey tickets, but when they hear that Chip Coffey's coming, we're going to get some hockey tickets.
Well, you know, I was just talking with Adriana during the break, and I'd mentioned to her that I have been to Canada many times. Of course, you know, everyone's gone across the border into Niagara Falls, which I have done myself several times. But I was fortunate enough to actually go to the Atlantic provinces on a trip at one time into Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island for one of my dream trips, and then across the Confederation Bridge into New Brunswick. And as I said, to her, I've never been to Toronto or to Montreal, but they are definitely on the Chip Coffey to-do list. Well, and I've been a couple of times into British Columbia, into Victoria and Vancouver. So I've got to get to Toronto, and I've got to get to Montreal and, you know, visit my Canadian friends.
You got your Canadian fan base here. And I'm originally from Montreal and now living in Toronto, and I got to tell you, both places would love to have you. We can't wait to...
I would love to come and spend some time in those two cities.
Oh, it would be amazing. You know, I've had this little thing, and people are going to laugh at me. Every single year, I've told my girlfriend and her family, I'm like, we got to go to a cemetery, we got to go with a voice recorder, get some EVPs. And they look at me like, you're crazy. I said, no, this stuff is real. This...
I'll go with you.
Oh, Chip is going to come with me. Yes, we're going to go. Okay,
I'll go with you. I'll go ghost hunting with you, sure.
Oh, this is amazing. Chip Coffey, Aaron Thomas, ghost hunting, and then bringing it to Animal House Radio. I love it. Oh,
and what if the EVP goes woof, woof, woof?
Well, hey, then I'm going to say, whose dog is that?
Yeah, well, like which dog? You know, there have been dog EVPs that come
I know, there have been, and there have been people who see. I mean, George Norrie was on earlier on telling us about his famous story when he was downstairs doing some work in his house, and through the corner of his eye, he saw an apparition of a dog.
I've seen my dog. Remember I mentioned Bo Michael Coffey?
Mm-hmm.
Bo's been gone 3 years this past November. And my cousin Kenny, that I mentioned before also, who is not a skeptic nor a believer. I mean, well, not a disbeliever or a believer. I think he's a bit of a skeptic. Let's put it that way. I said that wrong. He actually, you know, doesn't one way or another, and he knows he's got this weird cousin that lives in the house with him that believes in, you know, a lot of things that are spiritual and metaphysical and paranormal and supernatural. But he himself has admitted that he thinks he's seen Bo in the house since Bo passed away.
Wow.
We both have. And I think our other dogs see Bo, too, because every now and then they'll look over the edge of the bed and they'll wag their tail, and there's nothing there.
Yeah. Well, and this is coming from a story a personal story that I have, and I've always been a skeptic, and I you know what, I believe skeptics are there for a reason. You know, I originally had this whole pet peeve planned out. Every week I have a pet peeve, but originally my pet peeve this week was to talk about skepticism and people who are skeptic about these types of things. And you know what, there were skeptics out in the world years and hundreds of years ago who said, hey, the world is not flat, the world is round, you guys have it all wrong. They were skeptical about that, and they were right. People said we can never go to the moon, it's impossible. We did, even though there's still a lot of debate about that.
Right.
But I mean, they're always skeptics, and the word faith, it's a word that you have to believe in. And at the end of the day, if people see these things and experience these things, they are life-changing things. And I'm going to tell you one thing, Chip. When I moved to Toronto, now here's a true story. I moved in to my mother's house in Toronto, and I had my dog. At this point, he was 4 years old, a yellow Labrador named Romeo. And we're sleeping in a room, and Romeo doesn't really like to sleep on the bed. He likes to sleep on the floor. So what happened was, at 4 in the morning, and my mother had one of those old TVs, the ones that didn't have a remote, but, you know, you have to push the button out and you hear that little click. So she has that TV. And all of a sudden, the TV at 2 in the morning, exactly 2, turns on. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. So I get up, I turn the TV off. And 2 seconds later, it turns back on. I turn it off again. I'm just, at this point, trying to think to myself, you know, what's going on here? And you know, I'm not scared.